Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I'm Kat, she, her, and God, it's been a long week.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and God, I don't want to go back to Derry ever. I don't want to go there or go back there. Like,
I know what we're reading, and I still went to milk first. You're drinking a milkshake.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a dairy. Not the dairy. Like dairy.
Air.
Like, well, I was thinking like Derry, Ireland. I actually wonder, like, if that's part of where Stephen King got the idea, because it's like where the Troubles were. I think it's got a longer name. Just, I know because Derry Girls.
I figured.
But like,
I know your love of Derry Girls.
Everybody in the world should love Derry Girls, and I think if you watched it, like, legit, you would too. It's very funny. It's so funny.
Excuse me, we are unofficially not at all sponsored by Max, not by Netflix.
Max is the morons who didn't pick it up.
That's fair, and they're the morons who canceled Our Flag Means Death, so...
Because I don't think it's Netflix, I think it's, like, Channel 4 in...
Yeah, but I think our way of accessing it is Netflix.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah.
Anywho, so we are continuing to read it. We got this episode, and then we got one more chunk of this fucking book to read, and oh my god, we get to be done. We get to be done with it. It is a triggering book. We have been through this. I'm so sorry. We fully support trigger warnings and taking care of your own mental health, so here are the warnings for this book and thus this episode. Child death, racial slurs, racism, death, bullying, child abuse, sexual content, murder, violence, domestic abuse, homophobia, gore, suicide, fat phobia, animal cruelty, animal death, antisemitism, misogyny, infidelity, pedophilia, sexual assault, and God knows what else. Things that I couldn't think of, and I could only list so many things.
Things your brain can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was a sign of how done I was when I refused to settle down and just get to the subject matter. I think that it is so much more of a sign of how ready I am to move on to any other book that I refuse to have banter. Just get to it.
Let's get to it. So, we read chapter 19 and chapter 20 of part 5. And oh boy, chapter 19.
I won't even have fun with it. I won't even have fun with the fact that it's 19. Fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, yay, chapter 19, but also boo, chapter 19.
No, there's no yay. I don't care. I don't care that it's supposed to be a thing. Maybe I'm just cranky about it, but I don't think so.
It was a pretty epic chapter 19 though. I feel like it was no
epic because it was good, or epic because in the audiobook it's nearly 4 hours long.
Oh, dear God. I mean, I hated the first half of chapter 19. After Bill and Bev finally just fucked, despite the fact that I do not approve of them doing it, and I definitely did not need a sex scene here. It got a lot better. I was really into, like, Eddie fighting Henry and shit. But you know what? We'll get to those things. It started out rough. I had a hell of a time reading it. I even had to stop at one point to go to Taryn to complain and vent about chapter 19.
You know that it's bad. Like, if I stop, that's whatever. But if Kat stops, it's bad.
Yeah, but no, I did go and I finished it. But yeah, I had to pause because I was so infuriated by just all of the first part of chapter 19. So we start with Al finding out about Bev hanging out with boys because he saw them in the Barrens together. He's chasing his poor daughter around, beating the fuck out of her, wanting to know if she's still intact, and calling her a very fucked up name that I will not repeat on this podcast.
It was... I will say right now, like, we're not going in depth, both for the sake of other triggers, but also because I cannot. Like, it was bad.
It was not cool. Not okay. Just know that this was shitty. This was a shitty opening scene for this chapter.
Not okay in any era.
So he is demanding that she removes her pants and let him check that she is intact. And God, this is bothersome. Either way, he keeps ramping up and is being influenced by it with the capital I. So Bev finally kind of like starts to realize that while her dad is also still upset and he started this, it is making it worse. And so she makes a fucking run for it because she knows if she stays, he's gonna fucking kill her. Like, that's just what's gonna happen. Al chases her through town, people seeing and turning away, though there was a kid that ended up seeing like a giant spider chasing after Bev. But all of the adults mostly just, they had to turn a blind eye because that's how it works in Derry.
Yeah, it's very much like South Park.
Yeah.
Having to sacrifice Britney Spears for the
the greater
harvest.
good.
Yeah.
Bev does eventually escape, but she ends up running into Henry, Belch, and Victor. Henry is hearing the voice from the moon, and he knows it's manipulating him, and that while it sounds like many voices, it really is just one. Either way, he is urged to call up his buddies that day so they could let the bodies hit the floor. He started by killing his father. Now he's after Bev. And these chapters kind of toggle back and forth between 58 and 85, so this is going to be... I'm going to do my best to make it clear how we're bouncing around, but Taryn, please snag me if at any point you lose which era I am in.
I will do my best. I was getting lost in the book.
In 1985, Mike is getting a visit from Henry as well. He goes to do some just wrap up stuff and do a little writing when Henry shows up, and Mike does manage to like get in some good shots on Henry, but ultimately Henry hits an artery and Mike goes down, but he is able to call for help. Despite him being able to hear Pennywise taunting him on the phone, he is able to tourniquet his leg and kind of yell into the phone like, hey, if you can hear me, I can't hear you, but I need help. Please help.
Which was smart.
It was brilliant.
Weird and interesting how he said the line, I'm not being allowed to hear you.
Yes.
Though that made him, if the person on the other end doesn't know what he means, they're going to think he's crazy.
Yeah.
But I did catch that, like, I am not being allowed to hear you.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I feel like Mike really showed in that moment how much he has, like, been preparing for this. Yeah. For the fact that I'm going to get fucked with when this happens in such a way that I have to remember that while I might be invisible, I can do some things to reach out across that veil and make sure people still hear me.
And how much of a disadvantage the other losers not remembering what happened, like how much of a disadvantage that actually is.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been able to prepare. You think it's a good thing. You think, oh good, like they've had years to like recuperate and not have to think about this, but it's actually a huge disadvantage for them.
Yes. So Henry slips off thinking that he's killed Mike, and he has other losers to visit tonight. Back over to 58. Basically, the idea is that these chapters are kind of mirroring each other in a way, and it's like very beautifully done in that sense. Like
the years themselves, 58 and 85, they're literal mirrors.
Yes. And it's very cool in that sense. For all of the bitching that I will do, I will say, like, I think that's a really neat idea. I just don't approve of some of the content. But we're in 58, and shit is just finally coming to a head in both years. In 58, Bev has now escaped Henry, Belch, and Victor to the clubhouse where Ben is. They hide from the murder boys. Bev thanks Ben for the poem because she's very aware of it. It's a very awkward conversation about who likes who, and fuck, I never want to go back to middle school.
This was 85 or 58?
This was 58.
This is 58, okay.
This is 58.
See, you're not the one who's confusing me either. I was having trouble in the book understanding when things were happening.
So the two of them, they wait until their moment of opportunity and they make a dash for it to go and find Bill and the others who are all like kind of doing lunch stuff.
As you do.
You gotta eat.
Yeah.
We flash back to 85. Henry ends up getting a ride from none other than Christine, the car his father always said he'd own one day. A red and white 1958 Plymouth Fury. And behind the wheel is Zombie Belch. Also during this time, Bev is coming on to Bill and the infidelity happens, but it's fine because Bev isn't using Bill, and because she doesn't love her husband anymore as far as she's concerned, it's not cheating. And while it's not Bev's responsibility to keep Bill from cheating, she does push a lot when he starts to hesitate and tries to justify it. Very much avoiding recognizing that Bill also has a partner and that maybe he's having feelings about cheating. Didn't love that execution. It felt very disrespectful. But again, it's not Bev's job to keep Bill from cheating on Audra. It's Bill's job.
I think what was more interesting was that in that moment, she only brought up, like, it's not cheating because I'm not cheating.
Yes.
And it, even though she knows about Audra,
yeah,
it's, well, who cares about Audra? Like, you don't have to worry because I'm not cheating.
Yeah.
That was...
And I'm not using you right now. I'm not using you, Bill.
It felt like this is a very dated scene.
Yes.
And a very dated look at women. Because when she goes on to talk about, like, or in this same scene where they're talking about the way that he, like, her husband treats her. Because I think it's in the same scene. I don't think that we flip back and then come back. Like, I think they're talking about it and then they move into, like, fucking.
Yeah.
Like, the way that it's her fault. Because she, like, he says, like, well, no, like, sometimes you just kind of, sometimes we make dumb mistakes. Like, sometimes you just do that, and people make stupid mistakes. And it's like, no, like, you all have trauma. You all have, like, you all just, she's an abuse victim. She didn't make a bonehead mistake by staying with someone who beats the ever-living shit out of her if she questions them. But that is so much... I mean, people still look at women who stay that way so much.
Bill, of course, is realizing how Audra is a lot like Bev and suspects that maybe that's why it was so easy to hit on Audra in the first place.
What?
And all I can say is, Bill, you are a disgusting piece of shit. Audra deserves better than you. Bev, please get some therapy because Bill is a piece of shit. You are attracted to the passion, the chaos, but where there are sparks, there are fires.
Yeah.
Fires.
The fires of lust and love and yeah, the fires of passion.
Fuck both of them. All this also made me think of is, like, there's a TikTok creator that I freaking love. Like, her just breakdowns of various details of gender politics, I guess.
Yeah.
And how people interact in relationships together. And she did one on a famous couple. And she was talking about how the wife is not, in her opinion, the husband's dream girl, but his golden girl. Which I'd never really heard the golden girl concept before. And she explained it as the golden girl is like Daisy from The Great Gatsby, where she represents this thing of what she can do for the man and what she can, like, wipe away from him. And I feel like that's very much what we get with Bev and Audra, of Bev is the dream girl.
Yeah.
But Audra is the one where he literally gets to not remember how shitty his past was. He gets to be married to a famous movie star, regardless of what level of fame she has. He gets to have this famous movie star for a wife who everyone does regard as beautiful, even though, like, it's pointed out that her breasts aren't as big as Bev's and her hips aren't as round as Bev's. It's pointed out those details are not as good as Bev, but Audra is, she's a redhead. She is everything that Bill needs to validate himself.
Yeah.
For the girl he didn't get, Bev, years ago, without some of the connection.
Yeah.
Because Audra was incredibly supportive to him when he's like, I have to go back to Derry, here's everything. To the point that, you know, when she suspected something was that he was with somebody.
And suspected correctly.
Yeah. And this is enforced later when we get to chapter 20, and she is getting Bev's memories from childhood while Tom was getting Henry's. And that is all I could think of with reading this, because I had seen that video not long before about this concept of the dream girl versus the golden girl. And I think Audra is his golden girl, the one that could make it all better for him and make Bill a better person socially, emotionally, and just in general. He gets looked at as a better person with Audra than he would have with Bev, even with Bev being a famous fashion designer the way that she is.
Yeah. Well, it's very, like, manic pixie dream girl at that point.
Yeah.
And more than that, let's set aside what we know is coming and what starts to get revealed right at the end of them sleeping together with that whole all of us. Well, it was your way to get us out of it, Bev.
Yeah. I think that was before they had sex, though.
Oh, I thought it was right at the climax.
It might have been. I could have sworn it was before they actually started. No, it looks like you're right. Yes, it's right after.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I skimmed that shit show so hard because, like, I didn't need a sex scene in this book. No. We already know what scene's coming, and just to anybody who is not already aware, the scene that we refer to very often is the scene that Bev is referencing here, in that she screws all the boys at 11.
It was her way of getting them out. Because she loved them. Yeah. But, so, the reason I mention that is because even apart from that, Bill had to share her with all of the other boys emotionally. Yeah. And in a friend way. Audra is someone that he has not had to share that way. Audra had a movie career, and it seems like her career has slowed down, I believe, or has it sped up? I don't remember.
I don't know. I don't know that it's been made abundantly clear. I mean, she's obviously working on things.
But I can't remember now if it's that her career has kind of stagnated being with Bill, or if Bill, because he got her clean from the drugs, like, her career was speeding up. I don't remember, but I know that she is much more reliant on Bill specifically, and he does not have to share her with everyone else in the same way that he has to share Bev. And then the other point I wanted to make is, like, her name. I checked I checked, and Audra doesn't have this meaning. Audra isn't, it doesn't have this meaning, like, actually. But we've talked before in other books about the possibility that Stephen King is using names that have meanings to the audience that are just like the reader, like what it seems like it could mean to just like the lay person as you're glancing at it. And Audra seems like, if you look at it surface level, it kind of looks like the word audience, does it not? Yeah. And Bill being an author, he could have Bev. We know he doesn't end up with Bev. But he does have the one who's kind of like Bev and whose name has similar roots towards, like, audience and shit.
And author.
I feel like that connection is really the more important one because, like, she's chasing him. She's, like, it's almost the same as, like, Misery. Right? Where it's like, she is still trying to like find him, even though it's much more benevolent. Even the way that they met, like she knew who he was. They'd been at that party. Like, I think I've got that right.
Something like that.
They have so much of a backstory that's not in here, or that is in here, or is implied, or is explicit, that none of the others have. We don't know how Eddie and Myra got together. Yeah. Not really. We just know that Eddie and Myra, it's because Myra's like his mom. Yeah. And nobody else is married.
Stan was.
Oh, that's right. And we know Stan's story with his wife, but she's now out of the story entirely. Yeah. She didn't, like, come take his place or come try and find out what was so terrible that he killed himself over. She could have been written in as a character, and she's not. But
There can
Audra,
only be one girl.
but there's two, and that's what I'm saying. Audra has chased him down.
Yeah.
There should only be one girl, but there's her and her clone. The clone that was written in to be only Bill's.
Yeah.
To be Bill's specific Audrian's. Like, his only. So, that's interesting to me. Though, I also think it would be interesting if we find out that this ends with, like, Tom and Audra going off into the sunset together. Because if I didn't know how it ended, that's what I would think was going to happen now. But
the two of them cheat on their spouses. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They cheat on their spouses. Bev can have a shitty husband all day long. She is technically married. I don't disapprove of what she's doing. I disapprove of the coercion, like with Bill, because it legitimately says Bill thought of Audra, and then Bev starts like, well, hey, don't worry about it. I'm not using you to get back at my husband who's a piece of shit. I'm not cheating on my husband. But regardless, they are adults and they can suffer the consequences of their own actions.
You know what? I will say she really didn't cheat on her husband because she left him.
That's true. She did.
They are separated. As far as the book makes it seem, they are separated. She also did kind of coerce Bill. I don't know. This book's fucking weird. Like, the way that it covers shit is really weird. But Bill did straight up cheat on Audra.
He absolutely did. He is a piece of shit. Bill thought about his wife and then went, well, Beverly. But Beverly.
Audra.
No, Bill. That's not how that works. Your wife was very supportive to you when you told her all the crazy shit you did remember before you left. Including about Beverly. She allowed all of those things and was just trying to be, like, there for you.
That's how he knew she'd be okay with it. She's super supportive.
Yeah. You took advantage of that, and fuck you. But yes, my mini constant lobsters. If you are not certain about what we've been referring to by the scene, that is going to be in our next reading section. And it is... I don't know how it's going to be. I can't guarantee that we will actually read it. I'm fairly disgusted by this book at this point. But, you know, I'm not scared. Still really waiting to be scared. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. Of course, maybe I'm too desensitized. I read a lot of horror. I always have to up the ante now. But yes, there is a sex scene between a group of 11-year-old versions of the losers. And there will be content warning flags before we start discussing it. Assuming we get through it enough to discuss it in any capacity. And we're going to try and do this as respectfully as possible. Because 11-year-olds should not be having sex. So, back into the Wayback Machine in 1958, Bev tells everyone that this time Henry is different. She tells him that he is ready to murder them if he catches any of them. Bill decides enough is enough. And on that day, August 14th, 1958, they're going to the Barrens to finish this. It is unplanned. They've talked about, like, what would happen, but it is time. Which, of course, gets mirrored in 85 when Henry shows up at the townhouse that everyone is staying in, finds his way to Eddie's room first, and attacks. Eddie fights him off with a Perrier bottle and believes that he's finally killed Henry, or at least he hopes. So he calls up Bill for help because he has a dead man with a fucked up eye now in his room. Some interesting bits from 1958. First being that there is a storm, which is not dark or even dim. Perhaps Pennywise failed a dimness check when calling upon the storm. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it called it down. Maybe Ka called for the storm, purposefully making it not dim. I don't know. Someone called for a not dim storm.
Maybe the mist machine wasn't working, okay?
Either way, that means all stealth checks are not at advantage here. They cannot, like, sneak by. So it's also mentioned that Bill is just as crazy as Henry. They're pawns controlled by entities on opposite sides. But either way, the kids follow Bill down to the Barrens in 58, and Henry, Belt, and Victor see them and give chase. They descend into the sewers. Henry tries to follow, but they move in for the attack. Basically, the two groups end up at a stalemate. The losers can't go back up to the surface, and Henry and his friends can't come down because They are outnumbered whenever one gets to whichever surface.
This is quite possibly my favorite scene out of the entire book.
Because this is where it got better. After Bill and Bev got it out of their system, it got so much better.
I love the idea of just angry middle schoolers. Like, come down here, because once they outnumber you, you are fucked.
It's like rats.
Yeah.
So the losers venture into the sewers in the following order.
Bill, Eddie, Ben, Bev, Stan, Mike, and Richie.
And that's chapter 19, and fuck, I am so sick of this book.
Also, like, Henry being like, you bit me! Like, that was also a great moment.
So now we gotta talk about chapter 20. Chapter 20 was like 20 pages of the 100 plus pages that we reread.
I thought we had already gone over at this point what was in chapter 20.
I've referenced to some of the things that happened in chapter 20 out of order.
Oh, okay.
Because this is where we actually get more information about what Audra and Tom are doing.
Oh, okay.
So chapter 20, we're in 1985 again. It starts with Tom having a dream where he's got Henry's memories, as I mentioned, of killing Butch Bowers on August 14th with a knife that Henry received from one Robert Gray. Meanwhile, Audra gets a dream of Bev's memories. Audra tries to call Bill after she wakes up and has some weird moments in her room. Bill doesn't answer, and Audra is sure, after hearing that he received another 3 a.m. phone call, that he is with another woman. And she isn't fucking wrong, just a little off in her timing. She basically decides, fuck it, and heads to go to Bill. But she is, unfortunately, encountered by Tom in the parking lot. The losers, minus Mike, who is in the hospital, have assembled in Eddie's room and decide what to do next. Bev tries to call the library to reach Mike because the time has come to face it. Just like before, they didn't get to make the decision. However, she gets a cop demanding to know who she is and what she has to do with what happened because the librarian nearly died. Who the fuck calls the library at 3 a.m.? Bev hangs up and gives no info. She keeps trying to ask, like, what's going on, but, like, ultimately she ends up, like, hanging up the phone and not giving the cop the info he seeks. She tells the losers, and they know it's time once again to go to the Barrens. Ultimately, the losers decide that they have to be careful because the moment they step outside, they are once again going to become invisible. The town is turning its back to them. The storm of 58 may not have been dim, but they were regardless if they wanted to be so, which is why all the adults kept turning away.
They talk about the whole reason that they're going dim. They talk about being like sacrifices, basically, to end it.
Yeah.
That is something that will come up much later. That comes up in the Dark Tower book 4, The Reaping Fair, with the love of Roland's life, Susan Delgado. Stephen King seems to have this, like, he writes this story kind of over and over again with young people, it seems like, but with a young man and a young woman and a community that kind of tears them apart and sacrifices, at the very least, the woman, if not both of them, for kind of the greater good. And I think that's a very universal human story. It's because it's a universal human experience. If it's not something that humans have done, it is something that humans have feared that we would do because it's symbols of fertility. It's the young man and the young woman and the fertility of the earth and trying to get the harvest going. But Roland kind of ends up in a position where he has to choose chasing the man in black and chasing the Dark Tower and the love of his life. And there's a reason there's 3 more books after that. I see something similar here where it seems like Bill almost has to choose finding out more about what happened to Georgie and getting vengeance for Georgie and the love of his life.
Yeah.
And there is always this choice, it seems like, that ends up in a way that hurts the person that doesn't get chosen or the person that gets left. it ends up very poorly for them. It's never a choice where, like, okay, Bev, like, I'm going to choose to go on my vengeance quest, but you go ahead and live your best life. No, like, the woman always ends up, like, in a bad way because they lost, like, because Bill didn't choose her, like, he chose Georgie. Now she also is on this course of, like, horrible abuse.
The losers pile into Eddie's car. Eddie, by the way, is sporting a broken arm again because things always repeat themselves. Heading for the Barrens, George's voice comes on the radio telling Bill it's his fault he died. They turn it off, which is smart. And when they arrive to the pumping station, the mouth of the dungeon, you know, Bill finds Audra's purse, so he knows his wife is not only in Derry, but she's been taken by it. Yay.
The panic that must set in to be a dude who just cheated on your wife because you think she's like an ocean away or some shit. And then you find her purse and you're like, oh, fuck.
He does say, I hope she doesn't suffer for what Bev and I just did.
No, I do remember that, but like...
Oh, no. I agree. I'm not I'm using that to help and bolster your point.
Oh, yeah.
That is
for real.
Yeah. I don't defend Bill in this house.
Yeah, no. I just more mean the, like, I hope she doesn't suffer. I also hope she doesn't find out. Like,
people always find out, guys.
Yes, you will never get away with it.
Yeah.
If they don't find out, it's because they've always known. They know.
Yeah.
If you're cheating on your significant other, they know or they will know. Don't do it.
And what's going to be the real kicker is when you realize if they never confront you about it, it's that they don't fucking care. I hope you live with that pain, that they are aware of the fact that you're having an affair or doing shit you shouldn't be doing. And they're fine with it because they get something else from you that they'd much rather have.
And that's even worse because you could have just talked to him.
Yep.
You could have just talked to him. But I heard a long time ago that that's the whole thing with affairs, is that it's not really the sex. It's not really the relationship. It's the thrill of pulling one over on the other person.
Yep.
And it's like, that's gross.
It is.
It's so gross. You're not cool. You're not a secret agent.
No.
You're not a spy.
You're not that desirable either.
Yeah, you're not like... Because I always think, because ever since I heard that, all I can think is whoever's doing it, that's how they picture themselves, as some kind of like fucking CIA, like triple operative, like pulling all these, like able to juggle all these secret lives and shit. Nobody's life is cool.
No.
Nobody is smart. And nobody has that interesting of shit going on, and all you're doing is blowing up your life.
Yep. And for what?
And you will find out, like, just go on Reddit. There's whole subreddits about this shit.
Yeah.
And either there's people posting, like, bragging in the midst of having their life blown up, or there's people like us lurking and reading all about your life blowing up and finding it hilarious.
Yep, and making fun of you on a podcast.
Yeah. Or even worse, as soon as the mic goes off, because I think that's what I'm going to do with the rest of my night. I'm going to end up on subreddits looking at people's lives blowing up. And this is polite us because we're being recorded. It is so much worse as soon as the little light goes off.
Unfiltered versions of us are pretty impressive. I mean, you're hearing what the filtered version says.
Yeah, you're hearing, yeah. So don't do it.
Don't do it. It's not worth it. So the only other note that I have about this segment is in terms of when Bev is calling about, like, to the library, and she's talking to this cop, and she has this, like, idea of, like, a berserk deputy holding people hostage, and basically, that's what happens in Desperation, many years later, because I think Desperation's written 10 years later, or released 10 years later in 95. And I do think also the reference we got to the Dead Zone, I think he was also a cop. I think Frank Dodd's a cop. Yeah, I found that I wonder how much that's been kicking around in Stephen King's head, especially because we've got like the birds who are saying talk all over and over again. That's all I have.
Wow.
Because I am so sick of this book. These chapters sucked. Chapter 19 did get better. I like seeing Eddie be a badass and fighting Henry.
I think because we're in the run up to the end,
Yeah.
it's tough. The voices in the moon is interesting. That feels like something that's right on the edge of my brain.
Right?
That I should be remembering, and for some reason I can't. But I think it's because there is so much in this book and of this book, and but I just can't. I just can't.
No, it's true.
But I agree. I think I'm so prepared to be done with it.
Okay, so we are going to finish it in its entirety. That is the plan. If you would like to avoid the sex scene amongst minors, I will tell you where to find that so you can skip it. It is going to be in chapter 22, titled The Ritual of Chud. I'm assuming, I don't know what those little accent marks mean. I don't know how to pronounce that otherwise. It technically starts in stanza 11, but probably go ahead and you could probably ditch out on 10 as well. I don't think it would hurt. Pretty much don't read the end of chapter 22. That's all it is. The remainder of chapter 22 from stanza 10/11 is just the sex scene. But yeah, skip your way on over to chapter 23, and I believe you're safe from there. That is my understanding. I haven't actually read it yet. If it's any different, Lord knows I will have read this before this episode gets edited, and I will splice in something to update my incorrectness in this moment. But otherwise, finish this fight.
I won't have, because I'm specifically not reading that part, and I'm gonna let Kat read it and make sure that I know exactly where that part is, so I won't see it. So if you're skipping it, you're gonna be in good company.
Yeah.
Woo.
We did it!
We did it!
Let's get metaphysical.
God, I don't want...
Well, you gotta do it
Can
anyway.
we just say we did and not...
No, this is part of our gimmick.
God, I'm pulling it. The Seven of Pentacles. There's a dude on this card who looks like I feel looking in a bush.
We've gotten the Seven of Pentacles before.
Looking at a bush of many pentacles. With the most downtrodden look of just like, God, really? But I might be projecting.
That is because the 7 represents planting seeds for the future. It encourages looking at long-term investments, like the Dark Tower that we'll never get to go back to. And there's 7 books, and we haven't finished one. We are pages within finishing the one. The one. Anywho.
I just love that this dude has literally like the same look. That is the feels with which I just reach towards this deck. Tell me it's not.
No, it's true.
And the look on my face, and then literally that's what I pulled.
No,
That's
and you know
very
what's
funny.
interesting to me about that is that it's the 7 because there's 7 losers, technically.
And one loser who dropped off and is kind of away from the other ones, like that Pinnacle is.
Uh-huh.
That's funny.
That is wild to me. So, yeah. Either way, last time we got the world also, by the way.
And we had to go all the way around the world 20 fucking times to get here.
Yeah, it represents like completion and accomplishing shit and how something is about to be completed, and we're almost there. We're almost there.
And what got completed was my patience.
Yeah.
All right, car babies. Let's get out of here. You know the drill.
But why?
Because there's worlds. And there's a lot of them.
Deal.
Go get them.
Go find them.
Go on now.
Get you going. You can email us at miniconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram or TikTok, and hey, while you're there, maybe give us a follow. Love you, lobsters.